I'm not sure. I mean, obviously you have to ask Luka what he saw on that, but I thought he had a good look, and it looked like he kind of just lost his balance, didn't have the rhythm of the ball, whatever the case may be, and it kind of allowed him to get back in front of him. And I was kind of off balance when he gave it to me. I thought he had a great look, but that's what I looked. That's my POV.
Did you and LeBron have any communication about the final play after it was over? When you passed it to him, did you think he had a shot, or did you recognize that it was kind of be a tough opportunity?
I mean, I just saw him open. I didn't want to lose the ball, and we didn't have timeouts, But like I said, shouldn't have picked up the ball. I should have tagged. I thought I was getting a clean look, but that's on me.
Other letters to try and figure out exactly what that was. What did you see on that final play?
First of all, hi, Greeny, I have missed you. It may not be X's and O's, but more so OMG, like OMG, this meltdown is not cute. For the Los Angeles Lakers, what did I see on that final play? You're relying on the talent of two generational players in Luka, Doncic, and LeBron James. It was poor spacing. I think he could have taken that shot, but he also had 15 assists that night, so he felt like he was passing the ball to shooters that would knock it down. I'll even say this, Greeny, it's not this play, it's the play before. I don't know if you caught that defensive stop, and that's where they were trying to really seal the deal with this game. I heard one person on the mic, because we have mics on the rim, they said, let's get this stop. Well, the Lakers, they haven't, and that has been the story of the season. They are 24th in defensive rating. They let the Magic score, 31 points in the fourth quarter, shooting 59% or so from the floor. Their bigger issue than that final shot is the lack of ability to be able to get that final stop. And that, to me, was a double whammy for them on both ends of the floor.
Well, so, Tim, you can look at it that way. You look at the lack of a defensive stop, and then the sort of miscommunication between Luka and LeBron, and the whole final 30 seconds or so becomes, I think you're going to tell us, a microcosm of the Lakers season.
Howdy, Greeny. Look, you zoom in on that moment, and it's a shocking lack of confidence from Luka Doncic. There's a lot of reasons you can criticize Luka. A lack of confidence is very rarely been one of them. The only time I've seen Luka look that hesitant was right after the Mavericks traded for Kyrie Irving, and he was deferring too much. Obviously, they clicked the next year. They were a great closing duo. They went to the finals. This is a year removed from Luka being traded to the Lakers, and he has not developed any kind of chemistry with LeBron James. Big picture, that's the problem. LeBron and Luka are an awkward fit. They are minus 82 this year with those two guys on the floor together. That is the worst plus minus of any Lakers pair. It's one thing for them to be poor defensively. You can expect that with Luka playing next to a guy in his 40s. They are a bottom 5 offensive team with Luka and LeBron on the floor together. That tells you this is a duo that has no kind of chemistry.
And Tim, I wanted to show one other sequence that took place in the third quarter also, because this is something that I think a lot of people were picking up on. And we'll see Luka Doncic, he's going to not get a call, and he's going to complain about it, and that's nothing new for him. But then he doesn't get back on defense, and the Magic wind up scoring on the other end, and there's just a little bit too much of this going on. So the other thing was a microcosm. Is this a little bit of a microcosm of what we see with the whole Luka Doncic show as well?
Yeah, look, Luka's had two glaring flaws throughout the course of his career: conditioning and crying. The conditioning he has made major strides in. He's crying as much as he ever has. And let me preface this by saying I got a C in a community college psychology course in the late 90s, so I'm not qualified for psychoanalysis. I did cover Luka the first 6.5 years of his career. I've talked to a lot of people who have coached him, who have played with him. What I can tell you is Luka vents his frustration at the referees. So the more he's frustrated, the more he's whining, he's crying, and he worries more about sometimes the 3 guys in the gray jerseys than the 5 guys in the opposite jerseys. And look, he's going to have defensive problems regardless. It's hard to play defense if you never cross half court because you're worried about a call that you didn't get.
Sinead.
You're right. And I know you know the Luka experience better than most people, Tim. The one thing that I want to push back on you is you said Luka Doncic and lack of confidence in the same sentence. I don't really necessarily believe that. What I saw in that final possession was someone who shot 2 for 10 from 3, who understand maybe this was not my night to shoot that shot. And so I'm curious, Tim, where you stand on maybe in this game he had lack of confidence because of his poor shooting from beyond the arc versus someone who's known to take over. Like the lack of spacing on that final possession to me was the bigger issue than Luka passing up the shot.
Luka had a great look, and he is not a guy who worries about a shot that he's missed before, right? I mean, the cojones have never been in question. He passed up a great look to get LeBron a terrible look. That does not make any sense. And again, the one thing the Lakers have done really well this year is close games. So in that sense, this is an exception. But in terms of the bigger problems, that duo not fitting, Luka being frustrated at a lot more than the whistle, those are glaring issues right now for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes, far be it from us to question the cojones. All right, both of you stay close by. We'll have much more on the hoops.
It's
as
too
we
early,
continue.
Greeny.
Let me get to the top end.
And NBA reporter Tim McMahon to the show. And Tim, LeBron and Luka seemed like they weren't on the same page for that last play of the game. It's now been over a year since the Lakers made that huge trade for Luka. What's been the league's reaction to this play between Luka and LeBron, this pairing that they've had?
Howdy, ladies. I think the general consensus around the league is it won't last long. And what I mean by that is it won't last long in the playoffs. This looks like a team that is destined to be bounced in the first round, and that this partnership won't last much longer. This is a very awkward situation. LeBron, for his entire career, has had everything built around him, has had the keys. That is no longer the case. This is very much Luka Doncic's team. LeBron is bizarrely kind of a guest in his own home. I don't think LeBron is back in LA next season, and for whatever reason, those two as a duo have not clicked. They are minus 82 with Luka and LeBron on the floor this season. That is the worst of any Lakers pair.
It does feel like when the Lakers made that trade for Luka that they were giving him the keys to that organization going forward. Tim, sit tight.
The Orlando Magic was the first time this year that they failed to close out a team and get the win after leading at the end of the third quarter. Disappointing, to say the least. They go 4-4 on this 8-game homestand. Listen, second chance points was a big theme tonight. 13 offensive boards for Orlando that turned into 15. Second chance points, Lakers struggle from the free throw line, 20 of 28. But when you look at this box score, the balance was there for the Lakers. It had all the makings for a win. Where did you see this game get away, James? End up with Orlando winning.
I don't know, Gid. I think some decision making down the stretch. You know, I think defensively, I think LeBron got kind of suckered in a little bit, and I was saying all the time, you got to stay at home on Bane. He's the big shot maker, and I think LeBron got suckered in for that big three. The offensive rebounds you talked about, Geeter, the inability to execute, not fully using the 24-second shot clock to move the ball. They had Ayton very involved, and I think they stopped going to the bread and butter and they went back to some ISOs down the stretch that did not work in their favor. Offensive rebounds, once again, it really hurt them. But I just think decision-making down the stretch, some defensive indecisions, offensive rebounds, I keep saying that. Just another disappointing loss at home.
For me, I just think it boils down to bad luck. You think about, when's the last time we seen Rui shoot an air ball? But we lucked up and got that one, got in bounds. And then they had 2 offensive rebounds there. I call it 2 offensive. The guard sneaks in, gets it, then it goes the window. He puts it back. There's so many things like that. It's the way the ball bounces. And I figured, when you have those moments where you need to knock out a team, you need to execute. And execution is boxing out. Execution is doing a little thing. Execution is not about doing what you do on the offensive end. And I think it was some bad luck with some mauls, but also it boiled down to execution.
Yeah, and you guys are talking about, listen, I don't know if we can show you right now all 3 of these possessions, but, Desmond Bane, the big 3, the Carter putback that came off an offensive rebound from a guard, and then the LeBron possession at the end. I think everyone thought Luka was shooting that ball. There's the Bane 3. There it is.
There's some players you got to stay at home. He's known for being a big shot maker. So I know LeBron wanted on the same side. That was easy to guard, a pass away. So I thought Luka would take the shot to give them a few seconds to possibly get an offensive rebound as well.
And I think LeBron felt the same thing, and then not knowing probably how much time was left on the clock, and he's got to force that shot.
I think the pump fake to relocate by Luka gave him wide open shot, and it was actually closer. So LeBron was like, okay, I'm going to the basket. And now he's like, wait, what's happening? You know, and it was a little confusing. And for me, you know, I don't know if Luka, I doubt this, because Luka, he gonna shoot it regardless. He was 2 for 10 from 3. Do you think that played a part in it? Who knows? But LeBron was shooting it very well. And sometimes, you know, we settle for jump shots when Luka had a drive. You're so good at drawing the fouls. Just go ahead and drive. I know you weren't shooting it good from the free throw line either, but who knows? You got that Luka magic. It might have fell in. You got the and one. So I think there was a lot of things going on there, and it looked to me like they started thinking. You know, when you think as a basketball player, that can kind of throw you off. So I felt like they were thinking a little too much.
Look back to that big possession too, James, where we thought Luka got fouled on the 3 with Carter closing out.
Yeah.
And then they end up calling no foul. The Lakers did get the tip.
Yeah.
They had a jump ball at half court, but big play when you think Luka's going to the free throw line for 3 up 1.
That was a big play. I also know that, you know, one of our big game-winning, you know, shot makers is Austin Reaves. And I think with Luka not shooting the ball as well, tonight, you know, maybe you go to Austin, who's definitely, you know, gets in the interior of the defense, probably wouldn't have been looking for a 3 himself. But yeah, I mean, these are decisions that they make. Some work, 2 in a row at home. That doesn't taste very well. And so now they got to figure out how they can bounce back.
So, Rob, let's talk Paulo Banchero. I mean, 12 for 22, 10 for 11 from the free throw line. Missed his first one late in the game, actually. It was a break for the Lakers. He ended up with 36. But when you look at his third quarter, Lakers had that 10, 12-point lead. 17 in the third really got Orlando right back in it, down 1 going into the fourth.
You know, it was like him and Austin Reaves were just going at it in the third quarter, and he, you know, we joked about his nickname, but he showed us tonight that is not true. He came out, he took over the game. And one of the things we don't realize about this dude is a big body. This dude 6'10".
He's a tough cover.
He's a tough cover when he got it going like he had that, because he has the skill set to do all these things. But this has been a down year for him. And of course, when you play the Lakers, you come out of a slump.
And they've now won 6 of 8, and they're getting themselves into the playoffs.
He reminds me of LeBron James a lot. He has the size, the strength. He doesn't mind the physical contact. You know, I think his mid-range game is really, you know, outstanding. But as far as Rob's talking about the size and the strength, I compare him a lot to LeBron.
You guys, we were a little nervous about Desmond Bane throughout the whole night. He only had 10 going into the fourth. He was 0 for 5 from 3. He ends up with 22, so 12 of those come in the fourth, and 2 big threes, Rob.
Yeah.
One was to beat the shot clock from 30.
What was I saying before the time?
Do not let Bane get the ball.
You know, it's something about playing the Lakers, you know, especially with this guy. Even when he was in Memphis, he loved playing against the Lakers. He talks a lot of trash. He plays hard. But let's give it to him. This guy, he has a killer instinct. He wants to go out and beat guys. He tries to intimidate guys, and he never gave up. In the second half, he shot the ball well. He played good defense. You know, you think about the moment when he got hot, LeBron, on a couple plays, didn't let him catch. LeBron was moving his feet and doing that, and all of a sudden, the last play, you know, I've made a lot of shots like this because everybody doing the last
Get suckered in.
The last seconds of game.
Bane was the only player. He was if I look at it, the replay again, all other players on both teams were in that paint.
Yeah, because Paulo was at the rim, which I didn't really realize.
He was the only one that stood out there because he knew that they would find him.
Yeah, Paulo was getting to the rim, and I think that's what brought everyone in, and he kicked it back out. Let's hear from Coach JJ Redick, brought to you by your Toyota dealers.
Look, if you've somehow managed to survive being a Los Angeles Lakers supporter through this absolutely mind-bending stretch of the 2026 season without requiring intensive psychological counseling, developing stress-induced cardiovascular complications, or seriously reconsidering every major life decision that led you to voluntarily subject yourself to this particular brand of organized emotional warfare disguised as professional basketball entertainment, then you deserve recognition for possessing the kind of emotional fortitude typically reserved for hostage negotiators Individuals who voluntarily choose to watch reality television marathons during natural disasters while maintaining their sanity, and people who somehow manage to work customer service during holiday shopping seasons without developing homicidal tendencies. Because what we've witnessed recently isn't just basketball gone temporarily wrong, it's a comprehensive masterclass in how external forces, officiating incompetence, and sheer bad luck can conspire to make even the most talented roster look like they're learning the fundamentals of basketball for the first time, despite possessing more individual talent than 90% of the league's so-called contenders, who somehow get praised for doing exactly what this Lakers team does better when everything isn't working against them through circumstances completely beyond their control. But here's the thing that all these so-called basketball analysts, talking head experts, and fair-weather supporters seem to conveniently ignore when they're busy writing premature obituaries for this Lakers season. Isn't it fascinating how quickly people forget that championship teams are built through adversity, tested by exactly these kinds of challenging stretches, and ultimately defined by how they respond to temporary setbacks, rather than how they perform when everything is going perfectly according to plan? The timing of these struggles couldn't be more perfect from a long-term development perspective, occurring during a season when the organization is simultaneously celebrating its illustrious championship heritage while building toward another title run, creating exactly the kind of motivational contrast that transforms good teams into great teams and separates franchises with championship DNA from organizations that fold under pressure the moment they encounter any legitimate resistance or challenging circumstances. Before we dive deep into this latest chapter of what uninformed critics are calling Lakers struggles, but what any intelligent basketball observer would recognize as a team working through the natural growing pains that occur when elite individual talents are learning to maximize their collective potential while dealing with injuries, roster adjustments, and the kind of external noise that championship organizations use as motivation rather than distraction. Make sure you absolutely demolish that like button with the fury of someone who's tired of listening to casual basketball fans who probably couldn't identify a proper screen and roll if their lives depended on it, attempting to analyze the strategic complexities of building a championship roster in the most competitive Western Conference in NBA history, where every single game matters and the margin for error is essentially non-existent. Now, let's talk about the broader context of this Lakers season. And here's a question that none of these amateur analysts seem capable of answering. Why exactly are we holding this team to completely unrealistic standards that we wouldn't apply to any other franchise in the league, particularly when you consider that they've been dealing with more roster turnover, injury complications, and schedule disadvantages than virtually any other playoff contender? The fact that we're approaching March and people are somehow surprised that a team featuring multiple new additions, players returning from significant injuries, and a coaching staff implementing new systems might need time to reach their absolute peak performance suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of how championship basketball actually works in the real world, rather than the fantasy basketball scenarios that exist only in video games and the imaginations of people who have never experienced the physical and mental demands of competing at the highest level of professional sports. I believe this pattern of so-called inconsistency becomes significantly less mysterious when you actually examine the context surrounding each individual performance, rather than simply looking at box scores and making superficial judgments about effort or ability. Because watching players like Rui Hachimura navigate through what lazy commentators are calling struggles but what any reasonable basketball observer would recognize as a talented shooter, working through the kinds of temporary rhythm disruptions that affect every single player in the league when they're not receiving sufficient shot attempts, proper offensive positioning, or the kind of systematic support that allows elite shooters to maintain their confidence and aggressive mentality throughout extended stretches when the basketball gods decide to test their mental toughness and professional resilience. Here's what's really happening with Hachimura's recent performances, and pay attention because this is the kind of basketball insight that separates informed Lakers supporters from casual observers who probably learned everything they know about basketball from watching highlights on social media. He's been oscillating between absolutely lights-out shooting performances where he demonstrates exactly why he's considered one of the most reliable three-point shooters in basketball over the past 3 seasons, and completely understandable adjustment periods, where he's learning to fit into new offensive sets, adapt to different defensive schemes, and find his rhythm within a system that's still evolving as players return from injuries and coaching staff continue to optimize rotations for maximum effectiveness. Going from 9 of 13 shooting against Dallas to 3 of 12 against San Antonio isn't evidence of inconsistency. It's proof that he's human and occasionally experiences the same temporary shooting variance that affects literally every professional basketball player, including superstars like Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and every other elite shooter who has ever played this game at the highest level. But here's the question that these critics conveniently refuse to address. Why isn't Hachimura receiving the shot attempts necessary to maintain the kind of rhythm, confidence, and aggressive mentality that allows shooters of his caliber to work through temporary slumps rather than allowing them to develop into extended periods of self-doubt that impact every aspect of their performance and team chemistry? The frustrating reality about Hachimura's situation is that he's clearly demonstrated the ability to be exactly the kind of complementary scorer this team needs. Someone who can provide consistent offensive production without requiring elaborate offensive sets, taking touches away from primary creators, or disrupting the flow of an offense that works best when players understand their roles and execute them with precision and professional confidence. Thinking about it objectively and without the emotional bias that seems to cloud the judgment of people who apparently started watching basketball last week, Hachimura should absolutely be attempting 6 to 8 three-point shots per game, rather than the 4 attempts he's currently averaging, because elite shooters like himself require repetition, rhythm, and the green light from coaching staff to be aggressive, even when shots aren't falling immediately. Just like every other successful three-point specialist in NBA history who built their careers on taking and making high-volume attempts rather than waiting for perfect circumstances that rarely exist during competitive basketball games, where defenses are specifically designed to prevent easy scoring opportunities. The chemistry development between Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reaves continues to represent exactly what any intelligent basketball observer would expect from 3 elite players who are still learning each other's tendencies, preferences, and basketball instincts while dealing with the kinds of external pressures and unrealistic expectations that casual fans place on every Lakers combination without understanding the actual timeline required for championship-level chemistry to develop organically through repetition, trust building, and the kind of shared experiences that can't be manufactured in practice or forced through media pressure and fan demands for immediate perfection. Here's another question that critics seem incapable of answering. How exactly do people expect three players to develop the kind of seamless chemistry that defines championship teams when they've been limited to such a small sample size of games played together due to various injuries, load management decisions, and the kind of roster availability issues that have affected virtually every NBA team this season, but somehow only become a problem when they involve the Lakers? Their limited opportunities to build chemistry makes their occasional flashes of brilliance even more impressive rather than disappointing, because the brief glimpses they've provided of their potential suggest they could develop into something truly special if given sufficient time, repetition, and the patience that championship organizations provide to elite talents who are worth the investment in long-term development rather than short-term gratification. Jake LaRavia's emergence as a reliable contributor off the bench represents exactly the kind of positive development that intelligent Lakers supporters have been predicting since the moment he joined the organization, providing energy, versatility, and precisely the kind of professional approach that championship teams require from their role players during crucial moments when games are decided by effort, execution, and basketball IQ rather than pure talent. But somehow, his consistent excellence gets overlooked by critics who seem determined to focus on temporary struggles rather than acknowledging the obvious signs of organizational depth and player development that separate well-managed franchises from teams that struggle to identify and maximize talent throughout their roster construction. I believe LaRavia's success should serve as irrefutable evidence of how the Lakers organization continues to excel at player evaluation, development, and roster construction, despite facing constant criticism from people who apparently lack the basketball knowledge necessary to recognize quality when they see it. Because his improvement represents exactly the kind of systematic approach to building championship depth that separates elite organizations from franchises that rely solely on star power without developing the kind of comprehensive roster strength that determines playoff success when every possession matters and opponent preparation becomes exponentially more detailed and focused. The Jackson Hayes ankle injury that occurred during the Boston game represents exactly the kind of unfortunate timing that has plagued this Lakers season. But here's what critics conveniently ignore when they're busy blaming the organization for circumstances completely beyond their control. How many other teams in the league could lose a key rotation player during a crucial stretch of the season and still maintain competitive intensity against quality opponents, while adjusting their tactical approach to accommodate roster limitations that would cripple organizations with less depth, coaching flexibility, and championship experience? Hayes' absence creates tactical challenges that require creative solutions, places additional pressure on remaining players to handle expanded responsibilities, and tests exactly the kind of organizational resilience that championship teams must demonstrate throughout long seasons when injuries, fatigue, and adverse circumstances threaten to derail progress toward ultimate goals. But somehow, this gets portrayed as a Lakers problem, rather than recognition that this organization continues to compete at the highest level despite facing obstacles that would devastate teams with less talent. Coaching and championship DNA. Tuesday night's 110-109 result against the Orlando Magic provides a perfect example of how media narratives and casual fan reactions completely miss the actual basketball story that was unfolding on the court, because anyone who actually watched that game rather than simply looking at the final score would have seen a Lakers team that controlled significant portions of the contest. executed beautiful offensive sequences, and demonstrated exactly the kind of championship-level talent that makes them legitimate title contenders when everything comes together properly, only to encounter exactly the kind of unfortunate circumstances, questionable officiating decisions, and sheer bad luck that can affect any game regardless of talent levels or preparation quality. But here's the question that nobody seems willing to ask. How exactly is it the Lakers' fault that Orlando shot historically poorly from three-point range through the first 3 quarters, but still managed to hang around because of favorable officiating calls, lucky bounces, and the kind of random basketball variance that can affect any individual game but doesn't reflect the underlying quality, talent level, or championship potential of either organization? The fact that Orlando needed to shoot only 24% from three-point range and still required multiple fortunate circumstances to steal a victory says everything you need to know about the talent differential between these teams and the Lakers' ability to compete with anyone when they're not fighting against circumstances completely beyond their control. Let's talk about Luka's decision in the final seconds. And here's where the basketball ignorance of casual critics becomes absolutely laughable. Anyone who has actually played competitive basketball understands that split-second decisions in high-pressure situations involve infinitely more complexity than armchair analysts can comprehend from their couches. Because players are processing defensive positioning, clock management, teammate movement, and countless other variables that casual observers never notice, but that determine the difference between good looks and great looks in crucial moments when games are decided by execution rather than luck. Luka's choice to create a better look for LeBron James rather than forcing a contested three-pointer demonstrates exactly the kind of basketball IQ and team-first mentality that separates elite players from selfish scorers who prioritize personal statistics over team success. But somehow, this gets criticized by people who apparently believe that hero ball and isolation plays represent superior basketball strategy, compared to the kind of unselfish decision-making that defines championship teams throughout NBA history, and continues to separate the Lakers organization from franchises that lack the championship culture necessary to make optimal choices during pressure-packed situations. Paulo Banchero's performance, particularly his 17 points in the third quarter, represents exactly what happens when talented individual players get hot during temporary stretches that have absolutely nothing to do with defensive breakdowns, scheme failures, or any other systematic issues that critics love to blame on Lakers coaching or preparation. Because basketball remains a game where individual brilliance can temporarily override even the best defensive game plans, and acting like the Lakers should somehow prevent every opposing player from ever having good games demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of competitive basketball realities that exist at the highest level of professional sports. Banchero's 36 points and 10 rebounds weren't the result of Lakers' defensive failures. They were evidence of a talented young player having one of those special nights that occur throughout every NBA season, regardless of opponent quality or defensive schemes. And the fact that the Lakers kept this game competitive, despite facing an individual performance of that caliber, should be viewed as evidence of their resilience, depth, and championship potential, rather than somehow being twisted into criticism of defensive preparation or execution quality. The sequence that allowed Wendell Carter Jr. to grab what's being called the game-winning offensive rebound deserves context that critics seem determined to ignore. 3 Lakers players were in position to secure that rebound, which means the defensive scheme worked exactly as designed. But sometimes in basketball, despite perfect positioning and proper execution, balls bounce in directions that favor offensive players rather than defensive players. And pretending like this represents some kind of fundamental failure rather than simple basketball variance reveals exactly the kind of analytical superficiality that characterizes most Lakers criticism from people who apparently expect this team to achieve perfection in every single possession, while other organizations get praised for achieving far less with significantly more favorable circumstances. I believe this type of random basketball occurrence reveals absolutely nothing about focus, preparation, or competitive intensity, because championship teams understand that individual possessions can be affected by luck, bounces, and circumstances beyond anyone's control, which is why they focus on process, execution, and systematic improvement rather than allowing single plays or random variance to impact their confidence, preparation, or long-term development toward championship excellence. The reaction from Lakers fans following this game reflects not disappointment with the team's effort, execution, or preparation, but justifiable frustration with external circumstances, officiating inconsistencies, and the kind of random variance that can affect any individual game but doesn't reflect the underlying talent, coaching quality, or championship potential that this organization possesses in abundance, despite facing constant criticism from people who apparently expect perfection, while other teams get praised for achieving significantly less impressive results with more favorable circumstances and less challenging schedules. This pattern of facing adversity while maintaining competitive excellence has become so predictable that intelligent Lakers supporters are beginning to approach games with the kind of confidence typically reserved for people who understand that temporary setbacks represent opportunities for growth, character building, and the kind of championship preparation that separates elite organizations from franchises that crumble under pressure when circumstances become challenging, rather than using adversity as motivation for achieving even higher levels of excellence. Looking toward the future and potential off-season moves, the persistent rumors connecting the Lakers to Giannis Antetokounmpo represent exactly the kind of organizational ambition and championship vision that separates elite franchises from teams that settle for mediocrity. Because while other organizations hope to maybe make the playoffs and possibly win a round or two, the Lakers continue to think bigger, plan smarter, and position themselves to acquire the kind of transformational talent that defines championship dynasties, rather than simply accepting whatever talent they currently possess as sufficient for their ultimate goals. Here's another question that critics seem incapable of answering. Which other organization in the NBA consistently attracts attention from elite players who want to win championships, play in marquee markets, and represent franchises with the kind of championship culture and historical excellence that makes every season a legitimate title opportunity, rather than simply hoping to reach respectability or maybe achieve unexpected success during favorable circumstances that rarely align for organizations without the Lakers' institutional advantages? Potential buyout market additions like Lonzo Ball and D'Angelo Russell could provide exactly the kind of depth, experience, and championship-level talent that transforms good teams into great teams. But more importantly, their interest in joining this Lakers organization demonstrates the continuing appeal of playing for a franchise that represents championship excellence, market prominence, and the kind of organizational culture that attracts winners rather than players who are satisfied with moral victories or personal statistics rather than ultimate team success that defines professional careers and creates lasting legacies. Rob Pelinka's confirmed retention as the head of basketball operations provides exactly the kind of organizational stability and championship continuity that separates elite franchises from teams that panic during temporary adversity and make reactive decisions based on short-term criticism rather than long-term vision, strategic planning, and the kind of patient championship building that requires years of systematic improvement rather than quick fixes that sacrifice future potential for temporary satisfaction that ultimately leads nowhere meaningful. Thinking about this decision from any rational perspective, maintaining leadership continuity while building toward championship excellence requires the kind of organizational patience and strategic thinking that distinguishes the Lakers from franchises that change directions every time they encounter criticism or temporary challenges. Because championship building involves systematic development over multiple seasons, rather than reactive moves that satisfy critics but ultimately undermine long-term success and championship potential. The announcement that new owner Mark Walter has approved season ticket price increases for the 2026-27 season represents exactly the kind of confidence in future championship success that separates elite organizations from teams that lower expectations and reduce prices when they encounter temporary adversity rather than maintaining championship standards and expecting excellence from every aspect of organizational operation, because successful businesses invest in quality, maintain premium standards, and price their products according to value rather than panicking during temporary challenges that test organizational resolve and commitment to long-term excellence. This decision demonstrates tremendous confidence in the team's championship trajectory and organizational direction, because asking supporters to increase their financial investment while building toward championship excellence requires exactly the kind of bold leadership and unwavering commitment to winning that has defined Lakers basketball throughout its championship history and continues to separate this organization from franchises that make decisions based on fear, criticism, or short-term thinking, rather than championship vision and long-term success. Bronny James' continued development with the South Bay Lakers represents exactly the kind of systematic player development and organizational patience that championship franchises employ when nurturing young talent, rather than rushing players into roles they're not ready to handle. Because intelligent organizations understand that proper development takes time, repetition, and gradually increasing responsibility rather than immediate NBA minutes that could actually hurt long-term development if players aren't adequately prepared for the physical and mental demands of competing at the highest level of professional basketball. His development trajectory follows exactly the same pattern that has produced championship contributors throughout Lakers history, because this organization understands how to identify talent, provide proper development opportunities, and gradually increase responsibility as players demonstrate readiness for expanded roles rather than making emotional decisions based on family connections, media pressure, or external expectations that have nothing to do with basketball readiness or organizational needs. I believe this comprehensive analysis of the current Lakers situation reveals exactly what any objective basketball observer would expect from a championship organization that continues to compete at the highest level while building toward future excellence despite facing constant criticism from people who apparently expect perfection, while other teams get praised for achieving significantly less impressive results with more favorable circumstances, better injury luck, and easier schedule situations that make their success appear more impressive than it actually represents when examined through the lens of competitive reality, rather than media narratives and casual fan expectations. The upcoming stretch of games provides exactly the kind of championship preparation and competitive testing that elite organizations require during their development toward ultimate success, because facing quality opponents, overcoming adversity, and maintaining competitive excellence despite challenging circumstances represents precisely the kind of experience that transforms talented rosters into championship teams capable of achieving sustained success, rather than temporary achievement that disappears when circumstances become challenging, or pressure increases during crucial moments when champions separate themselves from pretenders. Looking at this season through the proper lens of championship development, rather than the superficial analysis that characterizes most Lakers, criticism reveals a team that possesses more talent, depth, coaching quality, and championship potential than virtually any other organization in the league, but that continues to face unrealistic expectations and unfair criticism from people who apparently hold this franchise to completely different standards than they apply to other teams, while ignoring context, circumstances, and the complex realities that affect every basketball team throughout long seasons when health, luck, and external factors can influence individual results without reflecting underlying quality or long-term championship potential. Isn't it interesting how quickly people forget that championship teams are built through exactly these kinds of challenging stretches, tested by adversity rather than achieving easy success, and ultimately defined by how they respond to temporary setbacks rather than how they perform when everything aligns perfectly according to predetermined expectations? The Lakers continue to demonstrate championship character, organizational excellence, and competitive resilience despite facing circumstances that would cripple organizations with less talent, coaching quality, and institutional championship culture that defines this franchise and separates it from teams that fold under pressure rather than using adversity as motivation for achieving even greater heights of basketball excellence. This Lakers team represents exactly what championship organizations look like during their development phases: talented, resilient, continuously improving, and positioned for sustained excellence that will ultimately validate the patience, vision, and unwavering support of intelligent fans who understand that temporary challenges represent opportunities for growth rather than reasons for panic or criticism, that ignores the obvious championship trajectory that this organization continues to follow despite facing obstacles that would derail. Franchises with less talent, leadership quality, and championship DNA that has defined Lakers basketball for decades and continues to separate this organization from pretenders who mistake temporary success for sustainable excellence.